Today's episode is being brought to you by Untarnished, Reclaiming My Self-Worth Through God's Untainted Love. Untarnished is a compelling memoir and simple self-help guide where I give you the inside scoop on my personal journey and provide coping strategies to help others heal from their past. You can download a free copy of the first chapter by heading over to donnacherie.com/untarnished. You're listening to Untarnished Moments, the podcast that helps you shine through life challenges and move past self-defeat into victory. I'm your host, Donna Cherie. Let's get into today's show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Untarnished Moments. I'm super excited about today's topic as well as our guest, who has just a wealth of knowledge in the health and wellness industry, and I'm happy to have her on the show today. Welcome to the show, Esther.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation.
All right, so let's jump right in. Tell us more about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I am a personal trainer, a sports nutritionist, and ultimately using those skills in health and weight loss coaching. I work with women who, kind of in a nutshell, have found themselves on the back burner in their lives, mostly, busy women, whether or not you have kids, most do, but just kind of have gone through the years and realized your own self-care and own needs have fallen to the wayside because you've prioritized other people and other things and have reached a point where you know that you need to get back on the priorities list. It's taken a toll on your confidence, your self-worth, and how you're looking and feeling. So we take a really comprehensive approach to doing that, knowing that, yes, the exercise and nutrition component of it is important, but that there's so much more beneath the surface, and giving yourself the support that you need and learning how to develop the skills and the tools you need to be healthy for the rest of your life is so much more important than, how quickly you're losing weight or any of like the real specific nitty-gritty stuff.
So from a personal perspective, how did you how did you develop this passion to be able to help women in this area? Like, what sparked your interest?
I sort of fell into it. A lot of different pieces have come together to lead me where I am now. Originally, I ended up picking my college major, which was exercise science, just based off, well, I like to work out, so I like to get paid to do that. And then once I started personal training after college at a big commercial gym and actually meeting real life clients, I realized that nutrition was a huge piece that I wasn't yet really qualified to be helping with. So that led me down the nutrition road. This is in my early to mid 20s, where I was still struggling myself. I had all of this textbook knowledge and I felt like I knew what to do and I just wasn't doing it, which was super frustrating. And I also felt like I wasn't able to serve my clients to the best of my ability because I had a hard time taking the science and helping people apply it to their lives. So that led me to the psychology of behavior change sort of realm, where we started getting into the mental piece of how do we take what we know and apply it to all these different unique lives. My life is different from your life, is different from every single person I'm going to work with. So I can't just be telling people, do what I do. This worked for me. I have to understand and help somebody figure out, what does it look like for me to apply this to my life with my unique needs, with my unique challenges, and kind of all of that combined into the approach that I take now. And I was, always case subject number one of I would learn something new, I would try it on myself. And over the course of just learning and implementing and experimenting, I overcame all of my exercise, nutrition, health related challenges. I stopped restricting and binging. I stopped having cheat meals. I stopped feeling like I was always, 5 or 10 pounds heavier than I wanted to be. I was able to overcome all of that stuff myself and then really kind of figure out the formula for what it looks like to help other women do the same. And then kind of the final piece of how I came to do exactly that is I lost my mother to colon cancer in my early 20s at sort of that formidable time where I was figuring out, what to do with my life. And I realized that the clients I'm most passionate about working with are ones who remind me of my mom, who are empathetic and compassionate and doing really good things in the world. She was a social worker, and who feel like they've put everybody and everything in front of themselves. And I knew that if my mom had had the coaching that I offer now, it could have really helped her be successful, lose weight, and, who knows what else it could have changed about her life. So now I'm so driven to help other women like that do the same thing, because I just know that so many women are playing small, are not getting the most out of their lives because they're held back by how they look and how they feel and what they think they're deserving or capable of.
Something that you said, like, it's not a one size fits all approach, because oftentimes we do, when we have our own experiences in health, or if we've overcome something, and then we want to help people, we'll put them in a box and say, oh yeah, I did it like this, so I know they'll get results. But what you said is so important. Like, that is not true. You may have a different approach. You might have to go through this process a little bit different. And especially when it comes to exercise, health, and wellness, I think there's this perspective that, oh yeah, she looks like that, I'm gonna look like that too if I eat exactly what she ate, if I do what she does. And that's totally not how it works.
You're exactly right. And I think that's part of what's so frustrating about the age of social media. Although it has its good sides for sure, there is definitely this big element of, look how good I look, buy the meal plan or the training program that I'm telling you I used to look this way, and then you will too. And so many people, if you haven't had a almost 20-year career in this industry, how are you to know that that's not how it works, that that's not how that person ended up looking that way? And it really is so important that you take a customized approach to you, because one of the biggest obstacles I see, or the biggest frustrations I see, is that most people are pretty good at losing weight. You've done stuff before that has worked. You can get weight off. The challenge is that the overwhelming majority of people will gain it back. So continuing to do that over and over again is not going to work. There needs to be something different. You need to actually look at, what are the aspects of my lifestyle, whether it's mindset and related to, my self-worth and who I think I am and that sort of thing. Maybe it's lifestyle of, oh, I'm just in the habit of burning the candle at both ends. I don't have any personal boundaries, that sort of thing. Figuring out, what are those pieces of your life, and how are they either making it easier or harder for you to maintain the results that you work so hard to get.
Yeah, and if somebody is on, because in my opinion, it's a lifelong journey, like, to stay well, live well, and be confident in all of those wonderful things. So what what can someone do, or like, how can they get their mind in gear to really just stay off track, and I mean, excuse me, stay on track, and get rid of those? Because I listen to your podcast and you talk about living, you know being free from diets. And so how can someone do that? Because I found, like, when they do they lose the weight, like you said, but then they go back to binge eating, or they go back to mindless eating, or eating what they want because they lost the weight and they don't think anything's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen.
Mm-hmm.
But what can someone do to, like, really stay on track and start getting their mindset in gear to have a lifestyle of change?
That's a great question. One of the best things you can do, and you can do it immediately, you don't need to wait until you've lost X amount of weight or crossed, the quote unquote finish line, is work on making an identity shift to the version of yourself that you want to be. What I see really often is, deep down, we just believe that we are this fat, lazy person, unmotivated, all those things, all this really negative stuff that you would, like, never say to another person. We believe that's who we are. And all the efforts that we're taking to lose weight are basically this front for hoping that maybe if we get there, we won't feel fat and lazy and unmotivated anymore. But then we end up feeling like imposters. Even when you do lose the weight, you feel like there's this mismatch between your body and your mind. You still see yourself as that version of yourself. And it's very hard to continue showing up when you have that identity mismatch. So what you can start doing immediately is just thinking like the healthy, fit version of yourself. What would that version of me do in this situation? And if that's a really tough sell for you, think about a fit, healthy person that you know. What would she do in this situation? And just kind of try on that identity. Because really what it is believing that you're her and starting to show up as her. Would the fit, healthy version of me hit snooze or wake up and do this workout or take this walk? Would the fit, healthy version of me scrap the lunch that I brought to work and go out to eat with my coworkers? Would the fit, healthy version of me look forward to binge eating all weekend? Just starting to kind of see that you do have these choices every juncture, and giving yourself the opportunity to pause and decide intentionally, what do I want to do here? Which of these is aligned with the identity that I want to embody? And if you're giving yourself that litmus test at all of the different intervals throughout the day where you have the opportunity, and you just start voting for that fit, healthy version of yourself more often, not only is it going to get easier and are you going to get the results, but you're going to become her. And it's going to feel so much easier then to continue to make those choices and show up as that person, because it's just who you are.
That sounds like a great place to be. I'm just thinking about that myself, like, what, the best fit version of myself. Whew, I definitely want to become her even more, because just to share like a little bit even about my own personal journey, like lately or this past year, I was like, hey, I'm going to get really serious about living well, eating well, and like feeling better, because I felt like I was just so sluggish, and I would press snooze and I would work out one day a week, but I wanted to work out like at least 3 or 4. And so I had got some accountability, and I found this app which has been really helpful, and they have like workouts and stuff available. And so I started tracking as well. And then even if I like fell off for, in my case, when I say fall off, like if I wanted to exercise 3 or 4 days a week and I only exercise 2 days, I just would tell myself like, okay, but you worked out, you did it anyway, instead of thinking about those negative things. So I definitely hear what you're saying. And to the person who might be listening, if you feel that, okay, you've made so much progress and you feel like you've taken 3 or 4 steps back, don't stop, but keep going. And it's a part of the journey. Like, it's not necessarily a destination, it's a journey. And then once you do reach your points, then you just keep going to that next midpoint, in my opinion. So
That's such a good reminder. And first of all, the compassion that you've shown yourself is such a great example of what we should all strive to do. Most of us go down that self-flagellation road of, God, I'm the worst. I said I was going to do 4 days a week and I didn't, because I always do this and I always fall short. And we make it mean way more than it actually does. And the fact that you're able to treat yourself with the same compassion that you would give any other person, and just say, hey, it's okay. You're a human and you're doing the best you can. Good for you for showing up 2 times. That's awesome. Keep going. That is huge. And even though it might not feel like it, change from a place of love and understanding is the only change that lasts. You cannot hate yourself into showing up better or differently. And I think the other great point you made is that everybody's experience has its ups and downs like this. Everybody has times where you feel like you're quote unquote off track or moving in the wrong direction. And I like to think of a hiking trail, where a lot of people think the route to your goal is this very straightforward, linear, I take, tightrope type situation. So then when they experience more of this like hiking, winding, weaving, mountain road, they think something has gone wrong. And we naturally blame ourselves, and the inner critic starts rearing its head of like, I told you couldn't do this. We need to normalize the fact that what you just said is the experience for almost 100% of people. We all have times where things are going really well and we're nailing it and we feel on top of the world, and then times where we get knocked on our butts and we feel like, ugh, this always happens to me. That's just what it's like. Sometimes you get a little lost, or you're turned around, or you feel like you're just kind of going in circles. That's just part of it. And if we normalize that and talk about it, and help people see that nothing has gone wrong, it's so much easier to keep going when you're just like, yep, a little bit lost in the woods right now. I'm going to do my best to get things straightened out, and it's all okay.
Yes, it's all okay. Esther, how can we overcome the shame and guilt associated with food choices and embrace a more positive and compassionate approach to nutrition?
Oh, that's a good question. All right. So, one of the things I think is so important is to learn or acknowledge or remember that the words we use and the way we talk to ourselves matters a lot, and the way we talk about things matters a lot. So, the primary reason that we experience shame and guilt around food is because of the way we're thinking about those foods. We have become conditioned through, media exposure and diet culture and all that stuff to categorize foods as good or bad. And then not to just leave it there, but then to extend that morality to ourselves. I am either good or bad, depending on how and what I eat. So, of course, if that is the soundtrack going through your head, when you eat something you've deemed quote unquote bad, now you are bad. How does that feel? Terrible. I feel guilty. I feel shameful. So if you do not want to feel that way around food, if it's a priority for you to improve your relationship with food and with yourself, it starts with removing those black and white categorizations. At the end of the day, there are no good and bad foods. There are foods that have more or less nutrients. There are foods that have more or less calories. There are foods that are better aligned with our goals. There are foods that we probably want to prioritize more than others, but none of them are inherently bad. None of them are inherently making you gain weight or unable to lose weight. So instead of those black and white columns, good and bad, start thinking about all the food that exists and all the food that you like on a spectrum where, the exact kind of criteria of your spectrum is going to vary. Some people are really hung up on quote unquote clean eating and only want whole, unprocessed, natural foods. Okay, then your spectrum is going to look a little different than somebody who says, my priority is the calorie content or how much protein they have or, the volume of the food. So don't overthink the spectrum of like every food has a specific spot on it. The point is that every food has a place on it, which means that any food can fit into your diet if you enjoy it and it helps you feel good. And that doesn't just mean physically. Some foods are just good for our mental state, our quality of life. Food doesn't have to be food is fuel, but it doesn't have to be just that. It's okay for food to be wrapped up in our celebrations, in our culture, in our bonding experiences. So there are going to be some foods that you eat not because of, the vitamins they have for you, but because you're like, this is really good and I would be sad if I didn't eat it anymore. So it starts with making that shift. And then what's really key is whenever you notice those negative feelings, the guilt and the shame popping up, number one, have the self-awareness to notice when it's happening. Pause and acknowledge, oh, I'm feeling guilty here. Why am I feeling that way? Oh, because I'm telling myself I shouldn't have eaten this food because it's bad and that now I'm bad and I'm going to be a failure or whatever. Noticing is the first step. And then working on just gently correcting yourself with the same compassion you mentioned earlier. Just remind yourself, hey, there are no bad foods. I didn't do anything wrong. I can eat this and still be healthy and fit. And just like you have to put in the reps in the gym to get stronger, you have to put in the mental reps to change your default thoughts. So yeah, you've thought these a long time. You've believed these things for a long time. So it's not going to be it's not just hearing this on this podcast is not going to be enough to change it. But this could be the catalyst for you every single time that thought comes up, gently correcting it and replacing it with something true and better and more productive. And the more you think that new thought, the more you start to believe it and the more it starts to take over as your default thought. And you'll notice that maybe they creep in every once in a while, but those feelings of guilt and shame will be so much less frequent because you no longer subscribe to that belief.
So good. And while you were talking, I was just thinking about, I don't necessarily know the technical word, but our food plate, what they say we should eat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and is that something in your opinion you think that we should be following as kind of like a guideline?
That's a good question. It's tough to say because I do think there are some issues with it. And I think, as with anything from the government, it's political and there's all this lobbying and, is what's being recommended actually what research suggests is the best for most people? Or is it that certain lobbying organizations have the most money to influence things like this? So I certainly wouldn't say that it's perfect or that it's something that you want to like necessarily take as dogma. But I would say, the purpose of information like that is to apply to a broad population. And the reality of it is most of the US is overweight, has a lot of health conditions, would benefit from just making some of those simple changes to their nutrition. So, I think one thing that most of us can agree on is eating more fruits and veggies, having more produce and more nutrient dense fresh foods like fruits and veggies, or even, canned and frozen are totally fine too, is a good thing. So I would, if you're feeling like I don't even know where to begin, there's so much information out there and I'm feeling overwhelmed, confused, that could be a great starting point. And my guess would be that even just kind of living by the My Plate guidelines would be a huge step in the right direction for most people. And then, maybe that's all you need to do. Or maybe you decide this has gotten me so far, and now I want to dive a little bit more into what might be more appropriate for me specifically, rather than just kind of like the US population as a whole.
Okay. Okay. And I mean, that's available too. If someone is listening, that's available online everywhere. If you just type in food and nutrition under images, it probably will just pop up. So
That's true. That's a great place to start. Yeah.
yeah. And just going back to, because I don't want to overlook what you said about when it comes to overcoming the shame and guilt associated with our food choices, you really emphasized the importance of shifting our thoughts. Like the power of just changing our thoughts it works. It's so simple, but like it works. And I think people look for they want something more advanced or, to do something different, but you have to start there because out of the mind flows everything, it flows the matters of our heart and how we go about our day, how we go about our lives. And so we have to start there with just changing our thoughts. And when it comes to our thoughts and just thinking about body image and how society defines beauty standards and what fitness looks like, or that you have to be buff and all of these other things, what are some empowering ways we can deal with negative body image and just kind of uh, remove what society believes is beauty standards?
So good. The first thing that comes to mind is remembering that you can curate your social media. You can decide what you are exposed to on social media, and that can play a huge role in how you feel about yourself. I know for me personally, working in the fitness industry, there's a lot of the sort of textbook fit women. And I don't remember exactly when this was, but for a while, I kind of went down the road of following a lot of other fitness people. And there were a lot of the sort of tiny, fit blondes, fake boobs, like just beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'd see them, instead of seeing their beauty and my beauty separately and unrelated, I would compare myself. And I would think, well, I'll never have abs like that. And I'm scared of surgery, so I don't want a boob job. And I would look terrible as a blonde. And just like start thinking all these negative things about myself. And I realized I'm doing this to myself. I am putting myself in this position because I am choosing to be exposed to this content when I'm on social media. So the thing I want you to do first is curate your own feeds. Go through and be ruthless. Does this account, does this person add value to my life? And is there a downside to that? If they're not adding value, just, they don't make the cut. If they are adding value, but there's a downside, like they say really interesting things, or I like their workouts, but I end up feeling bad about myself because even doing those workouts, I don't look like her. Maybe those should go too. There's the other side of this coin is that you can surround yourself with bodies of all different colors, shapes, and sizes, abilities, if you're intentional about it. There are plenty of men and women out there who are breaking the mold of the stereotypical, fit body or the athlete, who are doing amazing things. And you can choose to fill your feeds with those people. So when you scroll, you see people engaging in the healthy behaviors that you want to adopt for yourself, and they look more like you, or they look more like the people that you see when you're at the park in the neighborhood. They just look like regular people who are not setting this unrealistic ideal that makes you feel like, why bother? I'm never going to look like that. So I think that's number one, is like, just make sure that you're exposing yourself to the stuff that opens your eyes to not just that like narrow definition of beauty. And just like we were talking about with your thoughts about food, notice the thoughts that you're having about your body and we're always going to have an inner critic. Everybody does. Doesn't matter what you look like, how successful you are, how much money you have, how perfect your life is, you have a critic. So the goal is not to rid yourself of her. It's to quiet her and send her kind of to the back of your brain. So when you look in the mirror or when you try something on and it doesn't fit well and you start to go down that negative road, again, just gently kind of stop yourself and just at first, just work on getting to neutral. It's a big jump to go from like, ugh, I hate my fat stomach, to like, I have the stomach of a goddess. Like, if you don't believe it, don't try to make that big jump. But like, just stop saying the really negative stuff and work on the soundtrack being more neutral. And then start noticing the things that you do like about yourself. You just want to start giving equal airtime to the more positive stuff. So maybe you're never going to love your stomach. That's okay. You don't have to. You can maybe, okay. So you should love it anyway, but you don't need to love what it looks like. But there are things about yourself that you do already think are great. So start complimenting yourself, whether it's physical, whether it's how you're showing up in the world. I think I have really nice eyes, or you did a great job parenting in that moment, or that was really nice of you to hold the door for that person. Just start reminding yourself of how much good you have and you are. And again, putting in those reps to call yourself out on the negative and replace it with something that is better as an inner soundtrack. And know that it's a work in progress. You're still going to have down days. I actually, just this morning, I was thinking, so I got my period yesterday, and a couple days prior to that, I was like, God, you are just not looking good. Like, you're fluffy and you're bloated, and naturally didn't make the connection to why that might be. Mm-hmm. And it's just so normal to have days like that. So don't make that a problem if you're having a, quote unquote fat day, but do know that that's not who you are. There's so much more to you than what you look like. And there is already so much good about all of you, and to start focusing more on that.
So just as a recap, one is to curate your social media feed, and the second would be to reshape your thoughts around body imaging and how you see yourself. And again, I think our common theme today is really just that love and compassion that we need to give ourselves, and give ourselves some grace to just keep going, and to get up and try again, and to believe, and to reshape our thoughts.
You nailed it. I think that sort of two-pronged approach is really important. That, a lot of accounts you might see or books you might read focus on either the external or the internal, and without the other, I think they both fall short. If you just clean up your social media feeds, but you don't do the mental work, you're not going to feel that much differently about yourself. You're less exposed to the stuff that makes you feel bad, but you're still going to be so critical of yourself when you look in the mirror. If you just do the inner work, but you're still being bombarded with, those idealistic beauty standards, it's going to be harder for that inner work to stick because you have all of this stuff coming at you. So I think tackling from both ends is really the key to making change that sticks. And you touched on something just a second ago that I think is so perfect. We have a term in our coaching we call compassionate ownership. And it's really what you just touched on, which is the acknowledgement that we are deserving and worthy of the grace and kindness and empathy that we would give any other person. And also that we're the ones who have to do this work. We can't pawn it off on somebody else. We can't just like wish that it'll take care of itself. We need to be the ones who are committed to showing up to the best of our ability day in and day out, whatever that looks like, and continuing to do so, continuing to learn and grow and do whatever, that means for us in order to reach the goals that are important to us.
I want to switch gears a little bit. I mean, it still ties in, of course, to nutrition, but exercise. So if someone is wanting to start exercising, how should they go about that? Or what are some things they can do to get started?
Love it. Good question. Getting started is often the hardest part. And I think we really overcomplicate things. We go down the internet rabbit holes trying to find the perfect thing. And when we're not sure what the perfect thing is, we end up doing nothing because we don't want to do the wrong thing. And doing nothing is the wrong thing. So here we are. There are 3 exercise big rocks that I would encourage you to focus on. The first is just general daily movement in the form of a step goal. Having a step goal just gives you kind of this proxy marker, something to focus on to see, am I being more active than I was before? So there's nothing magical about like 10,000 steps. That's actually a totally arbitrary number that back in, I can't remember when it was, like the 50s or so, there was a Japanese marketing agency that was marketing a pedometer. And the Japanese character for 10,000 kind of resembles a person walking. And that's where 10,000 steps a day came from. So there's like no actual scientific merit for it. So don't hold yourself to this ideal that you have to be hitting 10,000 steps a day in order for it to count or anything like that. Just being more active than you are right now. So if you have an Apple Watch or an iPhone, or I wear a cheap Fitbit or a hip pedometer, you can get it at CVS for $10. Just get an idea of how many steps am I taking throughout the normal course of my day. For most of us, if we're not being intentional and taking a walk, or if we don't have, a dog we're trying to walk or things like that, might be in like the 3,000 to 4,000 step range. Just work on gradually increasing that 500 steps a week, 1,000 steps a week, until it feels more normal to be in the 6 to 8 range. Talking about giving yourself grace, it took me years to get consistently over about 10,000. Again, it's not like a special number, but it is a good sort of number to strive for because it is not easy. But for a long time, I would tell myself it was 10K or bust, and I would fall short and I'd end up giving up. And when I really just kind of settled in for the long haul and started doing a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, now it's my norm. It's rare that I'm under, 9,000 for a day. But I've given myself years to get here. So start where you are, gradually add a little bit at a time so that it doesn't feel like you're biting off more than you can chew, that you're not feeling overwhelmed by it, that it feels really doable. You want to build confidence with these healthy habits, not tarnish it. So ask yourself, am I 90+% confident that I can do this thing this week? Even in my worst week, even if things go south, can I still do it? Set goals that are that small, because each time you set and accomplish them, you're going to get more and more confident that you can do the next thing. And that's the point, that you're doing this stuff, not just now, but 10 years down the road. So give yourself the time to build that foundation. So start with walking, number 1, low barrier to entry. If you got feet, you can walk. If you don't, you can roll. We have a woman in my Facebook group who is in a wheelchair, and she has a rolling goal for the day. So there are ways that you can apply this to your life, no matter your circumstances. Start there. The second thing that I would add is strength training. And again, this does not need to be hard or time consuming or complex. Aim for 3 full body sessions per week. But again, give yourself the opportunity to do that gradually over time. So like you were saying earlier, If you are consistently doing 1, great. Then the goal is to consistently do 2. If you're inconsistently doing 1, the goal is to do that consistently. So really be kind to yourself and just be realistic. This is where I am now. I don't have to love it, but it's the truth. And this doesn't have to be where I stay, but I want to be smart about how I make these changes. So working up to 3 of those full body sessions per week and focusing on lifting weights that are heavy for you, if you have access to them. If you don't, just body weight is better than nothing. And you'll find that you got plenty of heavy stuff around your house that you can get creative with. You probably have kids, you might have pets, you've got, a flower pot. You can make it work with a lot of different stuff. Full jugs of laundry detergent, quite heavy. So you can get creative with the stuff that you have in your house and set the bar there. If you are doing those 2 things, you are worlds ahead of most people. The third big rock that we talk about in coaching is rest and recovery. I see a lot of people trying to do too much, A, ending up burnt out and falling short, and B, wondering why they're not getting much in the way of results because they're not allowing their bodies to recover and benefit from the workouts that they're doing. So the goal is not to be working out 7 days a week, to be running yourself into the ground. Focus on your steps and your strength. Fill in the gaps with other modalities that you enjoy and have time for, whether that's running or rowing or cycling or boxing or Pilates or bar. There's endless options, but also make sure that you're taking 1 to 2 rest days per week where walking, yoga, stretching type stuff is like the extent of the intensity. You're going to get better results. You're going to be in it for the long haul. You're going to give yourself that longevity, and you're going to be establishing a routine that you can maintain for a lifetime.
And how can someone, should they write this down, or what should they do as far, walking, that's simple to remember, but when it comes to the strength training piece, should this be recorded of what they're doing, or how does that work?
That's a great question. I would say yes, with a small asterisk by it. If just getting up and doing the workout feels like all you have to give right now, fine, start there. I would rather you get up and move than you document it. But once you do feel a little bit more in the groove, I would strongly suggest that you start making some notes. Starting off, maybe it's something super, super simple, like you print off or you have a calendar hanging in your kitchen and you give yourself a smiley face each time you do your strength workout. Just so you have this visual of how many days a week am I doing it? How does that compare to what I said I would do? Maybe it's something just focused on consistency at first. But then as you get underway, you're going to get better results if you're tracking your progress. Because what is very easy to happen is you kind of fall into the rut of going through the motions. That you're like, okay, I always do 10 squats, 5 push-ups, 25 crunches, and then I jog in place for a minute. And while that might have felt difficult at first, as you get stronger, it's no longer going to be as hard. And if you're not actually taxing your body beyond what it's used to doing, you're not going to continue to get stronger. So it's a really good practice to be in as early as possible, to be writing down, what am I doing? What kind of weights did I use? How many reps did I get? How did it feel? Any notes, the more info, the better. Because then the next time you do that workout, you have that as a reference to say, oh, last time I used 10 pounds, but I said it didn't feel super heavy. Now I'll go 12 pounds or 15 pounds. Last time I got 8 reps. Let's see if today I can get 9 or 10. Those small progressions are where your results come from. And if you're trying to just recall from memory, it's much easier to, like I said, kind of spin your wheels and you're showing up, but you could be making more out of that time.
Let's say someone is like hyped up right now, and instead of working out at home, they decide to get a gym membership. And then once they get to the gym, they're feeling intimidated, but they know that they really want to do this for themselves and just be around people and get out and exercise. What can they do to, 1, stay focused, and number 2, build up their confidence at the gym?
Great question. I call it gym intimidation, and it is a real thing. And even as a trainer, I've experienced this. When I first started doing CrossFit, I was so nervous. I sat outside the gym for, probably 30 minutes talking myself into going in. So no matter who you are, what you look like, you might experience this. The first thing is, going along with the theme of what we've been talking about, is notice your thoughts. You're feeling this way because you're thinking a certain thing. Likely that is something like, I don't belong here, people are going to judge me, that sort of thing. So notice that thought and remind yourself, I deserve to be here just as much as anybody. There are people of all different shapes, sizes, abilities, backgrounds, whatever. I'm just one of them. I am worthy and deserving of this, period. I think that too, going in with that thought will help you see that that is actually true. If you're going in saying, I don't belong here, everybody is judging me, everybody else is fit, and it's just me and I stick out like a sore thumb, who are you going to notice? You're going to notice the trainers, the people who fit the ideal of what you're telling yourself, the people who belong there. If you go in telling yourself there's people of all shapes and sizes, those are going to be who you see. And I've worked in a variety of gyms for years, and there are truly people of all different shapes and sizes and abilities. So you do belong, just period. So that's number one, to control the narrative in your head and remind yourself of that. One thing I do myself if I'm at a new gym is I'll usually the cardio in like a commercial gym, the treadmills and ellipticals and stuff like that are in a pretty central area. So what I'll do is get on a treadmill just to kind of get a lay of the land. It feels a little awkward when you're new to be like actually walking around looking at stuff, then you might as well have a sign that's like flashing and says, I'm new here and I feel out of place. So if you hop on a treadmill, you can walk, nobody's noticing you. It's not difficult to do. And you can start to look around and be like, oh, okay, so there's some strength equipment over there. This looks like there's a circuit over here. There's a group X studio there. You just kind of get the lay of the land. You can stick to whatever feels the least intimidating to you. Maybe the first month you're there, you just do the treadmill or the elliptical because it feels safe. And then once you feel more comfortable just walking through the doors and doing that, it's a little easier to say, oh, I'm going to venture over to the Nautilus circuit, the strength machines. Or now that I'm comfortable with those, I'm going to dabble in the free weight area. So it's okay for it to be a process like that. You might find that experimenting with group fitness classes is a good way to feel more comfortable and find other people and build some community there. Although it can be really intimidating to walk through the door the first time. If you do, you'll find that people are really nice in there and that it's a great way to get comfortable quicker because you're going to see the same faces, you're going to be doing the same things. And there really is kind of a sense of like sub-community in those areas where if you show up enough times, people are going to start to notice when you don't. And now you have some external accountability of, oh, hey, we missed you last week. And that makes it easier for you to show up. Oh, people noticed, people like me, people want me here. Another option is to look into whether the personal trainers there offer a free introductory session or a sort of get to know the gym type service. We used to do those all the time when I was a trainer. They're a good experience for new trainers. Yeah, they may, pitch you their services at the end, which, maybe you want. That could help a ton if it's in your budget. But at the very least, you walk around with somebody who is very comfortable in that space. You can ask questions without feeling like a dummy. And then you can, walk in with your head held a little bit higher and not feel as confused or out of place. So those are all the things that I would consider if you're new to a gym and just feeling weird.
Okay, great. I think those are great tips. And the other question that I want to ask you is, let's say somebody gets started, they go to the gym or they're working out at home. Because I'm saying this because I have real life examples of, people I meet or my coworkers and things like that, who get excited and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna go work out tonight. But then they go so hard. And because they haven't worked their muscles in a long time, they're like, oh, the next day, oh, I'm so sore. So then they get, I don't want to necessarily say unmotivated, but there's a hindrance there because they're so focused on the soreness rather than to keep going. So what can people do to overcome that?
Great question. So I would start off with, if you're not yet in this situation, do less than you think you should the first couple times. Just give yourself full credit for showing up and don't tell yourself it has to look a certain way. You are much better off if you can test the waters a little bit, dip a toe first and be like, okay, I wasn't debilitatingly sore after that. Great. I'll go back. So if you can avoid it, do that. If that's too late for you, know that this soreness is not going to last forever. Both like this soreness you're experiencing right now will only last for, for a few days, but also you're not going to continue to be this sore after every workout if you keep going. So I think sometimes it's like this giant red flag of like, I can't live life like this. If this is going to be how I feel after the gym, forget it. So just know that that's part of your body's just shocked. It hasn't been pushed that hard in who knows how long. So it's going to need some time. But if you show up for yourself consistently, you're seldom going to be sore anymore. And that soreness actually isn't an indicator of a good workout. When we take the approach we talked about earlier, where you're gradually increasing the weights you're doing, the reps you're doing a little bit at a time, you're rarely experiencing that level of soreness again. If you are already that sore, I would advise you to not do nothing, although that's tempting. Getting up, getting the blood flowing, taking a walk, doing some stretching, doing some yoga is going to help. And other things you can do, drink plenty of water, make sure that you're nourishing yourself with nutritious foods, you're eating enough food, make sure that you're sleeping, do some stretching throughout the day. If you have any sort of like self-stretching implement, like a massage gun or a foam roller, things like that, those can help. So don't just totally lay like a bump in a log or a bump on a seat until the soreness goes away. You can help alleviate it by doing all of those other kind of lifestyle things. And then once you do, take that soreness as a sign. I did too much last time. Let me back off a little bit and start experimenting with, where my actual starting point is, and know that in time, what left you so miserable and sore is no longer going to, as long as you have gradually progressed over time.
Yeah, so don't quit, stay in it, move around the next day or stretch. And like Esther said, just be lighter the next time. Because I find that some people, like, once they experience that, and then it becomes a cycle because they'll do it over and over again. So like they'll start that and then they get sore the next day, and then maybe 3 months from now, 6 months from now, then they'll start again, but they keep going through that same cycle. So.
Right, exactly. You never give yourself a chance to get out of it. So it's just always equally miserable.
Yeah. So what's one thing you'd like to leave with the audience today that might give them some additional encouragement or inspiration, whether pertaining to food, nutrition, or even from a standpoint of how this affects someone's self-worth when we're thinking about nutrition and exercise?
Yeah. Focusing on your health will improve every other area of your life. When you start rebuilding the reputation you have with yourself, when you start showing up and doing what you said you'd do, showing up for those workouts, not hitting snooze, eating the meals that you plan, all that stuff, your self-worth will skyrocket. And the benefits of that in the rest of your life cannot be overstated. Everything will be better if you are healthier and happier and more confident. And like, think about the possibilities. Think about what you could do if you didn't feel limited by your size or your fitness or who you thought you were. If you focus on your health first, you will show yourself that you are unstoppable. And there's nothing better than that. So to that, I would say, just start. Take one piece of what we talked about today and implement it today. Maybe it's a walk. Maybe it's a strength workout. Maybe it's joining the gym. Take one small action today, because that's all this is one small action after another. And it doesn't matter where you're starting. It doesn't matter who you are, how far you feel like you have to go, or how long the road is going to be. You will not get there unless you start. So use today as day one as your catalyst to a better, a healthier, happier, more confident future.
Amen. So, Esther, where can people stay in touch with you?
I have a podcast called Live Diet Free. I would love if you check that out. It's one of my favorite things that I do. I also have a weight loss that lasts cheat sheet on my website that you can find at esteravant.com/cheat sheet. And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Esther Avant, ESTHERAVANT.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. And I believe we had a great conversation.
This was awesome. You had great questions. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, guys. So until next time, ciao. Hey, Overcomers. Thanks for tuning in. For more information, head on over to donnacherie.com. If you want to find me online, I'm at I am Donna Cherie on Instagram and Donna Cherie on Facebook. Don't forget to join the Overcomers Confidence Club Facebook community. And of course, if you love the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes.